7-year-old Nova collapsed during the diplomatic ceremony, his blue-tinged skin turning ashen as his parents rushed to his side. Ambassador Carl Bell reacted instantly, his military medical training kicking in despite the cold relations between humans and the Zenari. "Stay away from our son," Lox hissed, his crystalline features catching the light of the United Earth Embassy's Grand Hall on Xenia Prime. The tall humanoid placed a protective arm around his wife Thera, both high-ranking officials in the Zenari diplomatic corps. Carl raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm a doctor. I can help." The boy convulsed on the polished floor, his small body racked with spasms. Carl noted the symptoms: pallor beneath the blue skin, the rapid breathing, the unfocused eyesall resembling advanced leukemia in humans. Thera looked at her husband, desperation overriding the decade of distrust following the territorial dispute in the Orion Arm that had nearly driven their species to war. "Lox, please." When the boy's convulsions worsened, Lox gave a tight nod. Carl dropped to his knees beside Nova, medical scanner already in hand. "I need emergency teleportation to the Hippocrates," Carl spoke into his communicator, referring to the UE medical ship orbiting the planet. "Prepare for xenobiological emergency admission." The voice of Captain Helena Morrison crackled through the device. "Ambassador, you know the protocols. We can't bring aliens aboard without Article 7 of the Sentient Life Preservation Treaty," Carl interrupted. "This child is dying." A pause. Permission granted. Zenari officials surged forward. "This is unacceptable." "Our medical technology isn't working," Carl finished, watching Nova's deteriorating condition. "Make your choice now." Minutes later, the white walls of the Hippocrates medical bay surrounded them. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Marcus Reed, Carl's former colleague from the Proxima Centauri conflict, wasted no time running advanced diagnostic scans. "It's cancer," Reed confirmed, pointing to the holographic display, "but affecting the crystalline structures unique to Zenari physiology. I've never seen anything like this." Lox reluctantly shared access to the Zenari medical database. "Your efforts are pointless. This condition has a 100% mortality rate, over 50,000 children lost in the past century." Reed's eyes narrowed as he scrolled through the data. 2 weeks until complete organ failure, that gives us time. Carl studied the cellular scans. "Marcus, look at these regeneration mechanisms. They share key similarities with Earth mammals." "You're thinking we could modify human cancer treatments?" Reed asked. "Nanite reconstruction combined with modified stem cell therapy," Carl nodded. Thera gasped. "Cell manipulation is forbidden by our council. The religious implications, but it could save your son," Carl insisted. Outside the embassy on the planet below, protesters gathered, demanding Nova's return for what they called a dignified passing according to Zenari traditions. Carl's communicator beeped. "Ambassador Bell, this is the Interstellar Relations Committee. You are ordered to return the Zenari child to his people immediately. This diplomatic catastrophe must be contained." Carl looked at Nova's frail body, then at the parents' desperate faces. "With respect, committee, I need 7 to 2 hours. We can save him." "This could trigger an interspecies incident, Ambassador. Your career." Carl shut off the commune. Dr. Tor. "Dr. Reed, prepare the lab. We're modifying the treatment protocol." He turned to the Zenari parents. "I can't promise success, but I promise to try. On Earth, we have a saying, while there's life, there's hope." For the first time in a decade, a Zenari and a human made eye contact without hostility. The future of 2 species might hang in the balance, but for Carl, only one life mattered now: the dying alien boy who had 7 to 2 hours left to make medical history. Aboard the Hippocrates, the sterile air of the quarantine medical bay filled with the persistent beep of monitoring equipment. Nova's vital signs displayed on holographic readouts above the Bedich Peak growing weaker, each valley stretching longer. His crystalline cell structure is degrading faster than Doctor. Anticipated, Dr. Reed said, fingers flying across the medical console. At this rate, we won't have 7 to 2 hours. Carl studied the cellular breakdown patterns. The cancer is attacking the intercellular matrix, equivalent of our connective tissue. Locke pressed his angular palm against the quarantine glass. Our physicians call it the fading. It begins in the outer tissues and works inward until the central core destabilizes. Medusa, the ship's AI, projected a three-dimensional model of Nova's cellular structure. Simulation 2184 complete. Treatment protocol failed. Initiating simulation 2185. Reed banged his head against the console. We've tried every combination of human cancer therapies. The nanites keep rejecting the Zenari cellular environment. Carl's eyes locked onto the simulation results. We're approaching this backward. The nanites are designed for human physiological need to adapt them using Zenari components. The crystalline compounds, Reed said, understanding immediately. If we could harvest healthy crystals from Nova's own tissue. Thera stepped forward. You would modify his cellular structure. Such manipulation violates our most sacred. Your son is dying, Carl said, his voice gentle but firm. I respect your beliefs, but I must ask which matters more. Before Thera could respond, Captain Morrison burst into the medical bay, her face tense. Ambassador, we have a situation. The main view screen activated, showing a massive Zenari vessel positioning itself near the Hippocrates. Its crystalline hull gleamed menacingly in the starlight. The crystalline fist, Locke whispered. Chairman Vex's flagship. The screen split to show the stern face of Chairman Vex, his crystalline features sharper and more angular than Locke's. This is an official demand from the Zenari Sovereign Council. Return the child Nova immediately. You have 12 hours before we disable your engines and retrieve him ourselves. Chairman, Carl began, the boy is receiving critical medical. I am addressing Captain Morrison, Vex interrupted. Not a kidnapper masquerading as a diplomat. Morrison straightened her uniform. My ship is on a medical mission. We have taken temporary custody of a critically ill child under Article 7 of the Sentient Life Preservation Treaty, which your government signed. A treaty you exploit while conducting illegal experimentation on our youth, Vex countered. His image expanded to fill the screen, revealing footage of Nova's unconscious teleportation to the Hippocrates. This footage is being broadcast across all connected systems. The Interstellar Assembly will convene in 6 hours to address these human atrocities. The transmission cut abruptly. Captain, the tactical officer reported, the crystalline fist has powered up targeting systems. Morrison's eyes hardened. Raise defensive shields, but weapons remain cold. The Hippocrates doesn't fire on anyone, that's our oath. She turned to Carl. Ambassador, I'm redirecting non-essential power to strengthen our shields, but I can't guarantee how long they'll hold against a military vessel. Carl's communicator beeped with an incoming transmission from Earth. Secretary General Mikhail Petrov's face appeared, lined with hardly restrained fury. Ambassador Bell, you are ordered to return the Zenari child immediately. One alien child is not worth interstellar conflict. With respect, sir, this is not a discussion. You've created a diplomatic nightmare. Ambassador Reed reports massive protests surrounding our embassy on Xenia Prime. The situation is untenable. Give Dr. time, Carl insisted. Dr. Reed is close to a breakthrough. Reed nodded, holding up a sample container with glowing crystalline fragments. I've isolated viable cellular material. If we can program the nanites to incorporate these crystalline structures, 12 hours, Ambassador, Petrov interrupted. Not a minute more, Earth out. As the transmission ended, Medusa announced, incoming communication from UEF Defender. The screen lit up with the weathered face of Admiral Xavier Blackwood. Hippocrates, this is Admiral Blackwood. Heard you could use some company. Admiral, Morrison acknowledged, relief evident in her voice. Just conducting a routine patrol, Blackwood said with a pointed look at Carl. Thought I'd position myself between you and that crystal Christmas ornament out there. Carl recognized the man who'd once been carried into his field hospital on Proxima Centauri, body ravaged by plasma burns. Admiral, this is outside protocol. So was saving my life when the manual said I was unsalvageable, Blackwood replied. Consider this repayment. His expression hardened as he opened a channel to both the Hippocrates and the crystalline fist. As long as a child's life hangs in the balance, I will ensure the doctors have the peace they need to work. Any aggression against the Hippocrates will be considered an act of war against Earth. On the planet below, Ambassador Reed negotiated his way through the protesters surrounding the Earth embassy. The crystalline bodies of thousands of Zenari reflected sunlight in a dazzling, intimidating display as they chanted for Nova's return. A junior aide rushed to his side. Sir, Lox and Thera have been placed under house arrest by Chairman Vex. The official charge is betraying Zenari sovereignty. Reed's stomach dropped. Find me a way to contact them. Hours later, a Zenari guard named Lyrics ushered Reed into a secure communication room. Make it quick, Lyrics whispered. My son died from the same condition 3 years ago. I would have done anything. Lox's face appeared on the screen, the crystalline features dulled with worry. Ambassador Reed. What happened? Reed asked. The truth happened, Lox said bitterly. Our religious restrictions against cellular manipulation are a lie. A population control measure implemented centuries ago after our world became overpopulated. Population control. The childhood cancer affects primarily lower castes. It's no coincidence, Dr. E. Back aboard the Hippocrates, Dr. Reed stared at his screen in disbelief. Carl, look at this genetic sequencing. Carl examined the data, his medical training allowing him to see the horrifying truth. This isn't natural cancer. These are engineered gene sequences designed to trigger cellular breakdown in a specific percentage of the population. 5% to be exact, Reed said grimly. This is population control disguised as disease. Carl's mind raced through the implications. If this got out, interstellar war would be the least of our concerns, Reed finished. The entire Zenari society could collapse. Carl made his decision. Classify this information. Focus only on treatment. Politics can wait, Nova can't. Reed nodded, returning to his work. I've prepared the nanites with crystalline structures from Nova's healthy cells. They're programmed to identify and eliminate the cancer while rebuilding damaged tissue. He filled a syringe with shimmering blue liquid. This has never been tested. The risks of rejection or accelerated degradation are significant. Nova's condition suddenly deteriorated. Alarms blared as his vital signs plummeted. We're out of time, Carl said. Do it. As Reed prepared to inject the nanites, the ship shuddered. On the bridge, Captain Morrison watched as the crystalline fist moved into firing position. They're charging weapons, her tactical officer reported. Simultaneously, Admiral Blackwood's voice came through. Hippocrates, we're positioning to intercept. Defenders' weapons are hot. In the medical bay, Reed steadied his hand and injected the nanites into Nova's intravenous line. The blue liquid flowed into the boy's veins, leaving a faint luminescent trail beneath his skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Nova's body convulsed, back arching off the bed as monitors screamed in alarm. He's rejecting the treatment, Reed shouted, fingers flying across his console. Cellular degradation accelerating. Lox and Thera pressed against the quarantine glass, faces contorted in anguish as their son's body thrashed and then went suddenly, terrifyingly still. The flatline alarm pierced the air. Beginning emergency resuscitation, Reed announced, hands moving with practiced precision as he modified the nanite programming mid-procedure. Outside the Hippocrates, the crystalline fist's weapons systems reached full power, triggering the UEF defenders' automated defense protocols. Two species hung on the precipice of war while inside the medical bay. Nova's heart monitor displayed a DRAT, unwavering line. 7 minutes. Dr. Reed's fingers flew across the medical console, redirecting nanite functions while Carl positioned his hands on Nova's chest. The traditional human CPR technique required adaptation for Zenari physiology, but the underlying principle remained the same: maintain circulation until the heart could restart itself. Modifying nanite cluster 6, Reed announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. Reprogramming for tissue regeneration at the cellular core. Carl pressed down in measured intervals, careful not to apply too much pressure to the crystalline structures beneath his hands. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the flatline continued. No response, Reed said, eyes locked on the monitors. Nanites are distributing but failing to activate the repair sequence. Locks collapsed against the quarantine glass, his crystalline face fracturing slightly with grief, Zenari equivalent of tears. Thera pressed her hands against the barrier, her normally melodious voice breaking as she called her son's name. The ship shuddered from an external impact. Over the comms, Captain Morrison's voice cut through. Medical status report. We're running out of time up here. Reed didn't look up from his work. One more modification. He accessed the primary programming interface, fingers trembling slightly. If Zenari physiology responds to electrical stimulation like human tissue. He reconfigured the nanites to generate a mild electrical pulse, calibrating it specifically for Zenari biological systems. Implementing emergency protocol Delta, Reed said. Nanite electrical stimulation in 3, 2, 1, he pressed the activation control. Nova's body jerked once, then settled. Nothing. Reed stared at the monitors, then adjusted the parameters, increasing amplitude by 15% and recalibrating to match Zenari neural pathways. His core temperature's dropping, Carl warned, continuing compressions. Last attempt, Reed said, initiating the modified protocol. A faint blue glow spread through Nova's crystalline body, starting at his chest and flowing outward along his limbs. The monitor emitted a single, weak beep, followed by another. We have rhythm, Carl announced, stepping back from the table. Lox and Thera pressed closer to the glass, their faces illuminated by the glow emanating from their son's body. Reed studied the biological data streaming across his screens. The nanites are responding to the new programming. Cancer cells are being systematically eliminated and damaged tissue is regenerating. He looked up at Carl, cautious optimism in his eyes. But we're not out of danger yet. The next 6 hours will determine whether the treatment succeeds or fails completely. Outside the Hippocrates, the tactical situation deteriorated rapidly. 3 additional Zenari vessels emerged from hyperspace, positioning themselves in formation around the crystalline fist. Together, they created a perimeter around the human ships. On the UEF Defender's bridge, Admiral Blackwood studied the tactical display with a grim expression. Sir, Communications Officer Daniel Winters said, Fleet Command is ordering our immediate withdrawal. Blackwood didn't respond immediately, his weathered fingers drumming on the armrest of his command chair. Sir, Winters persisted, the orders are direct from Admiral Chen. Acknowledged, Lieutenant, Blackwood finally said. He made no move to comply. Winters' console beeped with an incoming transmission on using an outdated encryption protocol. The officer frowned, routing it through secondary security algorithms. Admiral, he said, his voice dropping, I've intercepted a coded Zenari transmission. Decryption indicates Chairman Vex has dispatched a boarding team to infiltrate the Hippocrates and seize the boy. Blackwood straightened in his chair. Alert Captain Morrison immediately, and open a secure channel to the Hippocrates. On the medical ship, Captain Morrison implemented emergency security protocols. Security teams deployed at critical junctions throughout the vessel, while additional personnel sealed sensitive areas. Maintain life support at critical care levels for medical, Morrison instructed her chief engineer. Divert non-essential power to internal security systems. On Earth, the Interstellar Security Council convened in an emergency session. The chamber buzzed with urgent conversations as representatives from 17 worlds discussed the rapidly escalating crisis. Secretary General Mikhail Petrov stood at the central podium, his face grave. The United Earth Federation formally condemns the rogue actions of Admiral Xavier Blackwood, who has positioned military assets without authorization and in direct violation of established protocol. Behind closed doors, however, Petrov summoned Director of Intelligence Marcus Stone. "What do we know about this Zenari cancer?" Petrov asked once they were alone. Stone activated a secure data tablet. "I've been reviewing classified archives. There are references to a covert Zenari genetic program in intelligence reports dating back 70 years. He frowned. Strangely, most of the associated files were buried by previous administrations. Buried deliberately. It appears so, Stone confirmed. I've contacted Commander Walker on Xenia Prime. He's pursuing leads within their central archives. On Xenia Prime, Commander John Walker moved through the crystalline corridors of the Zenari Central Archives. His diplomatic credentials as a cultural attaché granted him basic access, but the genetic repository required additional clearance. A Zenari guard approached Lyrics, the same guard who had helped Ambassador Reed. "The section you seek is restricted," Lyrics said loudly for the benefit of nearby security monitors. Then quietly, he slipped Walker an access chip. "Third corridor, second chamber. You have 20 minutes before security rotates." Walker nodded slightly and continued walking. When the corridor cleared, he inserted the chip and entered the restricted section. The genetic repository contained thousands of historical records, stored in crystalline data structures that glowed faintly in the dim light. Walker connected his specialized scanner, designed to interface DRTH Zenari technology. What he discovered confirmed Dr. Reed's theory and revealed something far worse. The childhood cancer wasn't natural, it resulted from deliberate genetic modifications implemented 3 centuries ago by the ruling caste. Population control disguised as disease, but the most damning evidence was in the recent files. The Zenari government already possessed a cure, restricted to the 50 highest-ranking families, while the public narrative maintained the condition was untreatable. Walker downloaded the complete cure protocol to a secure data chip and transmitted the evidence to Earth. As he finished, a notification flashed on his scanner. Somion was accessing the repository's security logs. Aboard the Crystalline Fist, Captain Zorn received his orders from Chairman Vex. The message was explicit: prepare for boarding operations against the Hippocrates. Lieutenant Krell, standing at the weapons station, glanced at his captain. "Sir, is this action consistent with Zenari principles? The humans appear to be providing medical aid." Zorn turned sharply. "You question the Council's orders, Lieutenant." "My sister died from the same condition," Krell said quietly. "She was 7 cycles." Zorn silenced him with a gesture but found himself troubled by the order. He moved to his private chamber and contacted Zenari Command. "Request clarification regarding operational parameters," Zorn said formally. The response came directly from Vex, encrypted for Zorn's eyes only. "The human treatment cannot be allowed to succeed. If their medicine cures what we have deemed incurable, stability of the lower regions will collapse. Terminate the child if necessary." Zorn stared at the message, its implications violating every principle of the Zenari Code of Protection for Children. After a moment of deliberation, he established a private channel to the UEF defender. "Admiral Blackwood," Zorn said when the connection stabilized, "I require verification of your intentions regarding the Zenari child." Blackwood's weathered face showed surprise, then understanding. "Captain Zorn, I can arrange for you to see the medical procedure yourself. The boy is improving." Minutes later, Zorn watched via secure transmission as the medical team treated Nova. The child's vital signs, initially critical, showed steady improvement. The treatment was clearly non-invasive, focused entirely on saving the boy's life. Zorn closed the transmission and made his decision. He contacted his engineering section. Report technical malfunctions with all transport vessels. Estimated repair time, 3 hours. Back on the Hippocrates, Nova's condition stabilized. The monitors showed consistent improvement as the nanites eliminated cancerous cells throughout his small body. 40% reduction in cancer cells, Reed reported, checking the latest scans. And look at this. He pointed to a cellular analysis display. The nanites aren't just attacking the cancer, they're repairing the original genetic defect. If this continues, he won't just be cured, he'll be protected from future recurrence. Carl watched the blue glow pulsing beneath Nova's skin. This treatment could help all Zenari children with this condition. On Xenia Prime, Ambassador Reed worked frantically with Lox and Thera, broadcasting footage of Nova's improving condition alongside the leaked documents about the disease's true nature. The transmission reached millions before government censors could block it. The response was immediate. Parents of affected children gathered outside government buildings, their crystalline bodies reflecting sunlight into dazzling, angry displays. The upheaval reached Chairman Vex quickly. His response was swift and merciless. Captain Zorn is hereby charged with treason against the Zenari Collective. Commander Drax will assume command of the Crystalline Fist effective immediately. Commander Drax, a staunch Vex loyalist, wasted no time. Boarding team deploy. Stealth protocols in effect. 12 elite Zenari soldiers in advanced stealth suits launched from the vessel, their ship using cloaking technology to approach the Hippocrates' undetected doctor. Inside the medical bay, oblivious to the approaching threat, Dr. Reed monitored Nova's progress. 89% cancer reduction. Complete elimination projected within the hour. Nova's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on the humans around him. Recognition dawned in his crystalline features. He weakly reached out a small hand toward Carl, who gently took it. The universal gesture of trust transcended their species' differences, decades of mistrust dissolving in that simple contact. The moment was shattered by blaring alarms. Captain Morrison's voice came through the comms. Security breach detected. Multiple intruders on decks 7, 9, and 12. Medical, prepare for potential incursion. Security teams en route to your position. Carl looked from the monitors showing Nova's improving condition to the sealed medical bay doors. They had come too far to fail now. Prepare emergency transport protocols, he told Reed. If they breach this room, we move Nova to secondary medical. Outside in the corridor, the sound of energy weapons discharged as the ship's security forces engaged the Zenari boarding party. The intruders moved methodically, their objective clear the medical bay at any cost. Carl finished his sentence as the blast doors sealed with a resounding thud. Captain Morrison's voice crackled. Doctor, rough the emergency channel. Medical sanctuary protocol initiated. Dr. Reed, you now have independent life support and power. Those doors will hold against anything short of a capital ship's main weapons. Chief Engineer Tor's voice joined the transmission. I've rerouted emergency power from my quarters and 3 non-essential systems. Even if they cut main power, you'll have at least 4 hours of dedicated supply for your equipment. Reed nodded, his eyes fixed on Nova's readings. Nanite efficiency at 92% and climbing. We're almost there. Outside in the corridor, Security Chief Victor Ramirez deployed his 12-person team at strategic choke points throughout the ship. A veteran of the Europa conflict, Ramirez knew how to maximize defensive positions despite being outgunned. Listen up, he told his assembled team, shock batons and stun rifles in hand. They have superior weapons, but we have superior knowledge of this vessel. Team Alpha, take the maintenance junction on Deck C. Beta, secure the secondary medical access. Gamma, with me at the primary approach. Officer Jensen checked her stun rifle's charge. Non-lethal against military grade, not exactly fair odds, Chief. Ramirez's scarred face remained impassive. We're not fighting to kill, we're fighting to protect. Use the ship's architecture. Force them to split up. Lieutenant Sarah Reed hunched over the tactical station, her fingers flying across the interface. Chief, I've got 12 intruders advancing through the ship, 3 groups, 4 in each. Main force heading directly toward medical, smaller teams targeting engines and communications. Acknowledged, Ramirez replied. Keep feeding me their positions and lock down sections ahead of them. Create a maze. Back in the medical bay, Nova drifted in and out of consciousness. His crystalline skin, previously dulled by disease, had begun to regain its natural luminescence. The blue glow of the nanites worked through his small body like a living current. The pain, the boy whispered, his eyes fluttering open. It's less DRW. Carl squeezed Nova's hand gently. That's good, the medicine is working. Dr. Reed studied the monitors intently. Cancer reduction now at 93%, 94%. The nanites are accelerating their activity. On Deck C, 3 levels below, the first engagement erupted. Ramirez and 4 security officers had established a defensive position using overturned medical carts and portable barricades. The Zenari infiltrators, their stealth suits shimmering as they moved, rounded the corner with weapons raised. Now, Ramirez shouted. 5 stun rifles discharged simultaneously. 2 Zenari dropped immediately. A third staggered but remained upright, firing back with lethal energy bolts. Officer Chen cried out as one bolt caught him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. Concentrate fire, Ramirez ordered. The combined stun blasts finally overwhelmed the third Zenari, but the fourth used the distraction to advance, energy weapon blazing. Officer Karami fell, a smoking hole in her chest. Ramirez adjusted his aim and fired, the stun round catching the Zenari soldier directly in the faceplate. The infiltrator collapsed, twitching. Medical team to Deck C, Ramirez called into his comm. 2 officers down, 1 critical. The ship's internal sensors tracked the remaining Zenari as they split into smaller groups. They're adapting, Lieutenant Reed warned. I'm sealing bulkheads to channel them toward defensive positions Alpha and Beta. Aboard the UEF Defender, Admiral Blackwood received an urgent communication. Admiral, priority message from Captain Zorn of the Crystalline Fist. Blackwood's eyebrows rose. Put it through. The Zenari captain's face appeared, his crystalline features tense. Admiral, I have been arrested for treason. Commander Drax now controls my vessel and has orders to eliminate all evidence of the treatment. I don't have much time, but I'm transmitting shield harmonics and defensive codes for my ship. Do not use these for destruction, use them for truth. The transmission included a data packet that contained not just military information, but evidence of Chairman Vex's conspiracy. Blackwood studied the information briefly, then made his decision. Communications broadcast this entire package to every Zenari vessel in the system. Include our real-time medical data showing the boy's treatment progress. His tactical officer looked alarmed. Sir, those codes could give us a military advantage if we wanted war, Blackwood finished. We don't. Broadcast it. Now. On the Crystalline Fist, Commander Drax glared at the weapons station. Lieutenant Krell, target the Hippocrates medical section. Prepare to fire. Krell's crystalline hands remained still on the console. No, sir. That's an order, Lieutenant. Krell turned to face Drax, joined by 2/3 of the bridge crew who stood from their stations. I invoke the Cerex protocol removal of command during moral crisis involving children's welfare. Drax's features hardened into sharp angles. This is mutiny. This is protection, Krell replied, as security officers loyal to him entered the bridge. My sister died from the same condition at 7 cycles. I will not allow you to murder another child when a cure exists. Similar scenes played out on 2 other Zenari vessels, while the 4th ship silently disengaged from the formation and moved to a neutral position. On Xenia Prime, Commander Walker sprinted through the crystalline streets of the capital, the data chip containing the complete cure protocol secure in his pocket. Zenari security forces pursued him, their crystalline forms catching the light as they closed in. A civilian stepped into his path, of female Zenari with the distinctive markings of a mother. "This way," she whispered, leading him down a side passage. Walker found himself ushered through back alleys by a network of Zenari parents, each guiding him briefly before another took over. Their crystalline faces showed the same determined look, many clutching small tokens that Walker recognized as memorial crystals for deceased children. "My daughter died last season," one Zenari father told him as they hurried through a market square. "Save the others." Walker finally reached the Earth Embassy and burst into the communications center. "Prio Doctor, why transmission to the Hippocrates, medical-grade encryption?" Back on the Hippocrates, Dr. Reed received the transmission from Walker. His eyes widened as he reviewed the Zenari cure protocol. "This confirms our approach," he told Carl, adjusting the nanite parameters, "and gives us additional refinements. Their own cure verifies ours, but ours works faster." Nova's monitors showed 98% cancer elimination. The boy's eyes opened fully, clearer than before. "The pain is gone," he said, his voice stronger. "All of it." The medical bay doors shuddered under a powerful impact. The Zenari infiltrators had reached the final checkpoint. Outside, Chief Ramirez and his remaining 4 officers engaged the Zenari boarders in close combat. The narrow corridor prevented the Zenari from using their superior numbers effectively. Shock batons sparked against Zenari armor as the humans fought defensively, protecting the medical bay rather than pressing any advantage. "Hold the line," Ramirez shouted, driving his baton into a Zenari soldier's midsection. Elite Commander Trell, leader of the infiltration team, activated the emergency override on the medical bay doors. The massive barriers began to slide open. Carl positioned himself protectively in front of Nova's bed as the Zenari commander stepped through, weapon raised. But Trell hesitated, his crystalline features reflecting surprise as he saw Nova fully conscious, the boy's skin glowing with healthy lumen. Doctor, and see a sight no Zenari had witnessed in a child with the condition. In that moment of hesitation, Dr. Reed slammed his hand on the emergency protocol panel. A concentrated burst of medically-modified sedative gas hissed from ceiling vents, specifically calibrated for Zenari physiology. Trell staggered, his weapon dropping from nerveless fingers as he collapsed to the floor. Lieutenant Reed's voice came through the comm system. "All Zenari vessels are receiving recall orders from Xenia Prime. Chairman Vex has been removed from power by council vote." The remaining Zenari soldiers, now learning of the dramatic political shift and seeing their commander unconscious, lowered their weapons. Ramirez's doctor, Unity team cautiously accepted their surrender. On the monitors, Nova's treatment reached 100% completion. Dr. Reed ran a comprehensive scan, his face breaking into a smile. "Not only is the cancer eliminated," he announced, "but the genetic defect responsible has been corrected at the cellular level. He'll never suffer from this condition again." Nova looked from Reed to Carl, his crystalline features reflecting confusion. "Why would humans help me? Our people have fought for so long." Carl sat beside the boy's bed. "Because some things matter more than old conflicts. A child's life is precious, human or Zenari." The moment was interrupted as alarms blared throughout the ship. "Missile launch detected," Lieutenant Reed shouted over the comms. "Origin, crystalline fist. Target, Hippocrates medical section." Despite the Council's recall orders, Commander Drax, now controlling only a minority of his crew in a standoff on the bridge, had launched a tactical missile at the Hippocrates' desperate final attempt to destroy evidence of the cure. Admiral Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos. "Interceptors launch immediately. Stop that missile." Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wright's voice responded, "Interceptor away, but the trajectory makes standard countermeasures impossible without risking the medical ship." Wright's small craft accelerated toward the incoming missile, positioning itself directly between the weapon and the Hippocrates. "I don't have a clean shot," Wright reported. "Only one option." His interceptor's point defense lasers fired at the missile at nearly point-blank range. The explosion engulfed the small craft, the shockwave rattling the Hippocrates but leaving it undamaged. "Wright's craft is heavily damaged," Tactical reported. "Pilot life signs critical but stable." As recovery teams raced to retrieve the injured pilot, the situation throughout the system stabilized. The new Zenari leadership, headed by Second Speaker Dax, formally requested a sea doctor, ire, and medical cooperation. In the medical bay, Nova sat up in bed, accepting a small cup of nutrient solution from Dr. Reed. The doors slid open to reveal Lox and Thera, who rushed to their son's bedside, crystalline tears forming at the corners of their eyes. "The treatment worked," Lox said, voice breaking as he embraced his doctor. Nova looked up at his parents, then at the humans who had saved him. "Does this mean other children like me can be saved too?" Dr. Reed nodded, already preparing samples of the modified nanites for preservation. "Yes, all of them." Throughout the Zenari fleet, parents of affected children received the news with stunned disbelief followed by overwhelming hope. On Xenia Prime, thousands surrounded the Council Palace, their collective relief and gratitude changing the Doctor-itical landscape in ways no military action ever could. Secretary General Petrov's face appeared on the main screen in the medical bay. "Dr. Reed, we're organizing a full medical mission to Xenia Prime. Your team will lead it." Reed nodded, already mentally preparing for the massive undertaking ahead. "We'll need to establish a treatment facility, train Zenari medical personnel on the protocol. The Council has offered their central medical complex," Petrov replied. "Chairman Vex and his allies are in custody. Captain Zorn has been reinstated and will provide escort for our medical ships." Carl watched as Nova's parents hovered over their son, testing his reflexes, marveling at his recovery. The boy caught Carl's eye and smiled a universal expression that needed no translation. "Thank you," Nova said simply. Outside the viewports, the Zenari and human vessels repositioned themselves, no longer in combat formation but in cooperative arrangement. Medical ships from both species converged on the Hippocrates, preparing for the unprecedented joint operation about to begin. The pathway ahead remained complex and uncertain, but the first step had been taken. One child saved, thousands more waiting. Waiting to be saved. One connection made, one life changed, and through it, two worlds transformed. 3 months later, Carl Bell walked through the expansive halls of the new human Zenari medical complex in Xenia Prime's capital. The facility sprawled across 4 city blocks, its architecture a blend of human functionality and Zenari crystalline aesthetics. Sunlight filtered through translucent walls, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. He nodded to a team of Zenari medical apprentices who walked past, their crystalline features reflecting the light as they discussed treatment protocols with a human doctor. Their ease with one another would have been unimaginable just months ago. Carl paused at a window overlooking the central courtyard. Zenari children played their children who would have died without the treatment. Their laughter carried faintly through the glass, a sound once rare in Zenari society. His data tablet chimed with updated statistics. 2,037 children successfully treated a doctor. 0 failures. Every day brought more families seeking help, traveling from the farthest reaches of Zenari space. Reviewing the numbers again, Dr. Reed approached, her medical coat now adorned with a Zenari on her crystal pinned to the lapel. Hard to believe, Carl replied, gesturing at the courtyard. 3 months ago, most of those children had death sentences. Reed smiled. And now they're just children again. Carl's office door slid open automatically as he approached. Unlike the sterile diplomatic spaces he'd occupied before, this room reflected his new permanent position as chief liaison for the initiative. One wall featured adaptable crystalline structures for Zenari visitors, while the opposite wall housed standard human furnishings. Artwork from both worlds hung side by side. He had barely settled at his desk when rapid footsteps echoed down the corridor. The door burst open as Nova ran in, moving with an energy that still surprised Carl. The boy's crystalline skin gleamed with vitality, every facet catching the light. "Carl, look what I made," Nova exclaimed, holding up a small carved figurine. Behind him, Lox and Thera entered at a more dignified pace, wearing the formal attire of their new positions in the Zenari diplomatic corps. Carl accepted the figurine, turning it carefully in his hands. The carving depicted him in the traditional ceremonial pose of a Zenari elder in honor typically reserved for revered ancestors. "I made this in school," Nova explained proudly, his English significantly improved from their early interactions. "Teacher says my artistic abilities are exceptional, likely because the nanites enhanced my fine motor control when they rebuilt my nervous pathways." Carl met the boy's eyes, finding it difficult to believe this was the same child who had collapsed in his father's arms just 3 months ago. "It's beautiful, Nova. I'll keep it on my desk." Locke stepped forward. "We are here for his final examination." The change in Locke's demeanor struck Carl each time the DRET. Gone was the suspicious official who had initially rejected human assistance. In his place stood a vocal advocate for cooperation between their species. Dr. Reed arrived precisely on time, though hundreds of Zenari children now received routine treatment from other medical teams. "Let's see how our star patient is doing," she said, guiding Nova to the examination room. Carl remained with Lox and Thera, who updated him on diplomatic developments. The conversation paused when Reed and Nova returned, the doctor's face bright with satisfaction. "The scan results are perfect," she announced. "No trace of the disease or the genetic defect. Furthermore, the genetic testing confirms the therapy altered his germline Celcini children. Nova might eventually will be born without the predisposition toward the cancer." Nova beamed as Reed presented him with a small medallion bearing intertwined symbols of human and Zenari medical traditions. "You're officially graduated from our program," she told the boy. "The first of many, but always special to us." After Nova and his parents departed, Carl received a message from Admiral Blackwood aboard the UEF Defender. The ship had been permanently stationed in Zenari space as part of the new cooperative security agreement. The transmission showed a ceremony honoring Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wright, finally recovered from his injuries sustained, while intercepting the missile aimed at the Hippocrates. Wright crossed the deck with a slight limp to receive the interspecies peace medal, jointly designed by human and Zenari artisans. Carl watched as Captain Zorn, representing the reformed Zenari fleet, presented Wright with a crystalline shard from his own family's ancestral monument. Wright accepted with proper Zenari formal gestures, his movements studied but sincere. "Your actions preserved more than Nova's life," Zorn stated, his translator conveying the emotional resonance of his words. "You preserved the opportunity for truth, which has freed my people from generations of deception." Later that afternoon, Carl attended a session of the trial of former Chairman Vex. The proceedings had drawn to a close, with the verdict reflecting the Zenari's evolving perspective on justice. Rather than exile, the traditional punishment for high crimes, the tribunal sentenced Vex to work alongside the families affected by his policies. He would personally assist in the treatment program while wearing a monitoring device that broadcast his activities publicly. As Carl left the justice chamber, he passed a group of Zenari Parents' Council that had proposed this innovative sentence emphasizing rehabilitation over retribution. Their approach had already become a model for justice reform throughout Zenari territories. That evening, Carl reviewed a report from Earth's Interstellar Assembly, where a new framework for diplomatic engagement had passed with unprecedented support. The Nova Protocols, as they were informally known, doctorised guidelines for humanitarian intervention that balanced sovereignty concerns with universal rights to medical treatment. His comm unit chimed with a message from Dr. Reed. She stood beside members of the newly established Zenari Medical Ethics Council, which had formally renounced the population control policies of the previous regime. "They've granted us unprecedented access to Zenari biological data," Reed reported, excitement evident in her voice. Chief Medical Director Selana says. Reed angled the camera to include the Zenari doctor. "Our people once feared that sharing our biological differences would make us vulnerable," Selana explained. Her crystalline features bore the subtle markings indicating she had lost children to the cancer before treatment became available. "We now understand that these differences, when shared with trustworthy allies, become our greatest strength." 6 months later, Carl stood among the dignitaries at the inauguration of the first permanent human embassy on Xenia Prime. The structure's design incorporated elements from both species-soaring crystalline arches, alongside practical human spaces, physically representing their biological and cultural differences, while creating functional areas for both. Nova stood between Secretary General Petrov and the new Zenari First Speaker Dax as the ceremonial ribbon was cut. The Zenari had adopted this human tradition specifically for the occasion, one of many cultural exchanges flowing in both directions. After the ceremony, Carl noticed Nova had slipped away from the reception. He found the boy sitting alone in the embassy garden, contemplating a memorial installation honoring the Zenari children who had died before the treatment became available. Their names, over 50,000 spanning 3 centuries, illuminated one by one in a gentle sequence of light. Carl sat beside Nova on a bench designed to accommodate both human and Zenari anatomy. "I have been thinking," Nova said without looking away from the memorial, "about why I lived when they didn't.